Hello, my love. Welcome back to an episode of The Art of Stillness. I'm your host, Arianna. It's so lovely to be here with you today. I want to talk with you about something that has been coming up a lot in conversations with clients, and it is about capacity. When we have capacity and we are able to do it all and hold it all together over time, if we don't learn how to discern what to pick up, what to put down, when to stop, when to start, that capacity can become a cage. And I wanted to talk a little bit today about discernment, because when I speak to clients about capacity, especially those who are high performers, who can't seem to power down, then start to explore discernment. And quite often they don't know how to create more space to explore discernment to begin with. And they don't really know what it is, how to shape it, how to refine it. And I wanted to talk a little bit today about that. So today is going to be quite a large episode because we're going to be talking about quite a bit when it comes to discernment. And we're also going to be talking about ways that you can refine your own personal discernment practice. So when I coach women who are high performers, I always have to laugh at the cosmic joke that is the paradox of high performers, because they're usually the ones who are able to carry entire systems on their backs. They don't only have the capacity and the capability to carry it all, but they also do it with grace, an endless well of ambition and startling consistency. They're so capable, in fact, that their capacity has then become their currency. And when your capacity is your currency, you're in a danger zone. If you're listening to this and you think, okay, yep, you got me, or if you're like nodding your head furiously, you're going to love this episode. We're going to talk a little bit more about what that means for you as a high performer, and also how you can start to relinquish that control and also start to change your currency. And what I mean by currency is when you charge something for something else, right? So some people think that productivity is their currency, or the way that they are able to multitask, that's their currency. So with this particular episode, we're going to be talking about capacity having become your currency and what to do about it if you find yourself stressed out, strung out, and not really sure what to put down first. Mostly those of you who are here are entrepreneurs, solopreneurs of sorts, but this episode is also for, yes, business owners, but also mothers, friends, people who are active in their communities, anybody who feels like they're holding it all, which in my experience is most women and a few good men as well, of course. So let's talk about discernment. I wrote a post yesterday on Instagram about how high performers need to learn how to discern when to push and when to stop. And there was a comment left which got me thinking, which is actually the reason why I'm recording this episode. The comment was, quote, "Eventually you get really unwell, your body controls it all, and it forces you to stop." And I replied, quote, "Unfortunately, if you don't have measures in place to help you regulate, then yes. But from experience, if you're discerning enough to know when to stop, when to put the pens down and take a moment for yourself, you'll find that you're able to maintain a higher, sustained level of control. And in that lies the mastery. It takes time to get to a point where you're able to, but it is possible," end quote. And of course, my brain started churning here, because I thought this comment that I've left for this beautiful soul who has engaged with me on my Instagram post, the comment that I have left is not enough. We need to have a broader discussion on discernment. And this is what I want to talk to you about today, because if you don't know how to discern when it's time to stop and when it's time to strive or push, you will drop the ball. And then that one ball will be the beginning of the paw hitting the fan, because after one ball dropping, they're all going to start dropping. Believe you me, I've been there. I started to think about myself. I remember being worried about this very thing. In fact, it felt like it was almost a PTSD that I had from burning out. I remember having a conversation with my own coach about this topic because I was so scared to push the boundaries again because I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust that I knew or was discerning enough to be able to get back into my business, to run my business in the way that I wanted to, because I was afraid that I was going to burn out again. And it makes sense to someone like that. If you're listening and nodding your head, it makes sense to constrict and shut down. And you almost pendulum swing from being the reliable, the strong one, the capable one, to burning out and then shutting down and hiding. And what makes it worse is that then if you are shutting down and hiding, you live in a constant fear of burning out again, like I did, because if you didn't know how to discern in the past, you become untrusting of your own instincts and you just choose to play it safe, play it small, and you get stuck in and frozen in indecision. And I know that this is not just me, because I have noticed the same patterns with my clients as well, almost as if their ability to figure it out, something that they once found a lot of pride and joy in, that figuring out piece, the solutions piece, it now carries so much weight that the pressure has them feeling frozen. So let's talk about discernment, in particular, how to discern for yourself, because it's not some 5-step plan or a cookie cutter approach. It's not something that you can learn and then set in place forever, because it changes as you do. And as we know, we all change quite frequently. So I think it's more important to have the discussion about learning how to understand your own method and rhythm rather than seeking someone else's way or rules, because I have done that too and it never works. Someone else's way of discerning can spark conversation. It can spark some sort of an introspective inquiry, but if you take it verbatim and use it for yourself, it hardly works. So I will start off by saying that this is actually tricky terrain to talk about on a podcast, because I don't have you, the individual, the person, the unique individual with your own set of challenges and your own ways of doing things. You're not sitting in front of me and we're not talking specifically about you. But I'm going to do my best to set out some principles from examples that I have had conversations lately. And then hopefully you can take at least one or two and apply them to your own life and maybe massage them a little bit to make it work for you. I also want to mention that if you listen to this episode and you think, you know what, I actually do want to explore this path a little bit with someone who can help me through this. I am taking applications for a brand new experience. It's kind of like a coaching / consultancy mentoring program. It's called Lead from Stillness. It will run over 6 months and it is specifically for high performing women. And let me just let you know that mostly women in general are high performing because they're trying to juggle it all. But you'll feel this in your heart. Like, you'll know whether this is for you as we continue with this episode and whether you want more support. And the applications are now open. So if it feels like a fit, I invite you to apply. The links are all in the show notes or in the description or however you're listening to this. Without further ado, let's talk about discernment. Okay, let's first define what discernment is. It is the ability to make aligned decisions, especially when the stakes are high, in this case specifically, when there's a lot going on, the noise is loud, and the pressure to perform is strong. This is especially when discernment is critical. It's knowing when to act, and just as importantly, when not to. It's knowing who to trust and who to step away from. It's this inner knowing, the ability to know or feel or have some sort of inner experience so that you can either act or not. And discernment, where some people get it wrong, is that they think discernment is triggered based on fear or guilt or urgency. But it's none of those things. It's an inner clarity. And that clarity comes to each of us in various ways. What I will say about that clarity is that it is only ever available when we are regulated enough to hear it. Emotionally regulated, and also our nervous system is regulated enough to hear it. Now, I don't know about you, but you've probably noticed it if you're on Instagram. Lately, it feels like everyone is suddenly a nervous system expert. There is somatic language trending all over the place. Regulation is the new buzzword. And I'm not even going to go there now because I've sat with some mixed feelings about it. But the way that I've been speaking about nervous system regulation for years, long before it was catchy, clickable, or cool, was about understanding how you respond in your life. So when you learn about nervous system, the nervous system, your own intricate way of responding to life, I want you to discern whether or not you're getting your information from someone who has just picked up the word, the buzzword, and run with it and created some aesthetic reels or oversimplified graphics, or worse, using it as a marketing hook, which drives me insane. And I want you to really feel for yourself whether or not this is something that's actually grounded in science and various methods and practices that have been taught for a very, very long time. One of my favorite ways to guide women through nervous system regulation is through the breath, through stillness practices, because not all meditation is regulating. So it's stillness practices. And I talk a lot about that on my website. So if you've got any questions about what those are, you can go ahead and look at them. And it really is all about helping you come back into your body when you've got a high functioning survival mechanism that has taken over and has become, that in itself has become your norm. Actually, you know what? Let's get really clear what nervous system regulation is, just so that I can set a foundation here for the remainder of our episode. So to begin with, it's not being calm all the time, and it's not being unbothered or zen 24/7. It's not something you hack. Please don't ever hack it. It's something that you build over time. It is consistent practice, and you build it through cues of safety, rest, and connection. And to regulate your nervous system means that you're able to return to a state of balance after stress, homeostasis, actually, because I don't really know if there is any sort of balance. It's kind of like a homeostasis within the body. So that balance or homeostasis could look like moving out of freeze mode when you've shut down. So it's not necessarily the fact that you get triggered into shutdown, but it's how you move out of it. It's calming the fight or flight response without suppressing it. It's feeling safe in your body even when things are uncertain. It's learning how to recover faster from moments of emotional intensity or overstimulation. And it's being able to choose your next move from a place of presence, not panic or pressure. So at its core, regulation is about range and resilience. And it's not ever about this ability to stay cool, calm, and collected all the time. It's rather about when you do get triggered, because you will be, it's about knowing how to get out of that triggered state, how you don't get stuck in that triggered state, sometimes momentarily, but also in more chronic conditions over a longer period of time. So in practice, this doesn't look like just taking a deep breath when you're stressed, although it can be a tool that helps you move from one state to the next. But regulation isn't just breath work. It's learning how your unique system speaks to you. What cues safety for you, the person who's experiencing that dysregulation? What restores your energy? What boundaries your system needs to feel grounded? And each of us come to the party with a different set of baggage. We are all on this planet having had an experience, and those experiences shape who we are and how we respond to life, and they shape how we show up and also what we need to regulate. Every single one of us is different. So the micro decisions that I have found to be really helpful after years of studying my own nervous system, years of being taught through the life school how to regulate, is choosing to rest before my body begs me to rest. This could look like napping, yoga nidra throughout the day, not working 8 hours straight without taking a break, because I used to do all those things. It's noticing when your jaw is tight or your breath is shallow. And this is a practice in awareness. It's in the noticing that you bring your awareness to that and therefore have the choice to change it. It is letting yourself feel through without needing to fix it. And it's saying no to something small and feeling your system exhale. And yes, of course, my friends, tools help. Breathwork, movement, aromatherapy, stillness practices, all of these tools help. But without the context, this is where people get lost. because it isn't a one size fits all approach. It's actually a relationship with your body, one that requires listening, experimenting, and actually living inside your life, not just performing a ritual for Instagram. So if you've been confused by all the noise, or you've tried the tools and they don't stick, you're not doing it wrong. What's often missing isn't the next tool. It's not the breathwork practice or the cold plunge or the somatic checklist. It's actually the context, the understanding of what's actually happening in your system, and then the ability to know what to focus on and when. And most of this skill, listen to me when I say this, most of everything that I've just mentioned is a skill of tuning into yourself. This is self-study. This is what the yogis call svadhyaya, a foundational pillar of any inner work. In emotional intelligence, we call it self-awareness. So it's a different language, but the same core principle. And so you can't heal, you can't lead, you can't grow, you can't regulate sustainably without a relationship to yourself. And that's what every embodiment practice that I specifically teach, and a lot of incredible practitioners and therapists teach, that is what it's in service to. Not performance or perfection or productivity. It's actually about self-awareness. Self-awareness and therefore self-transformation through using these tools, yes, but the first thing is always self-awareness. Because once you know your system, its patterns, its signals, its thresholds, then you can move with it, not against it. And this is not just being more in tune in the fashionable sense of the word. It's actually the root of every core methodology. It all begins with self-awareness. So what I thought would be really fun is just to look at a couple of core frameworks. Maybe I'll list out about 5 core frameworks that I work with. And the only reason I say me only is because I know these frameworks really well. I'm sure that there are many others, and that if you follow someone who is really passionate about delivering educational advice and supportive guidance on how you can regulate your system without you feeling like they're just trying to get something out of you, then explore how their methodology also includes self-awareness, because you'll be surprised. It's a really beautiful thing to kind of have that light bulb moment. So firstly, emotional intelligence techniques. Self-awareness is the first step in the EI model. So before you can regulate your emotions or manage relationships or influence others, you have to know what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and what to do with that information. And so self-awareness is like the beginning stage of any emotional intelligence work that I do, particularly with organizations and leaders in corporate spaces. The second part with nervous system regulation is that without awareness, you actually can't recognize when you've shifted out of regulation. So as I alluded to earlier, it's that momentary pause where you notice the shift, because the tools will only work when you can track your state. That's why self-awareness isn't just a nice to have, it's actually the gatekeeper for real nervous system work. I've worked with human design and energetics, and the part of human design and energetics even that gets really difficult to teach is that you can give someone a chart and you can tell them to blindly follow it and just do what is on the PDF or in the blueprint, but that never works, because the whole point of a human design exploration exercise is about using your design and the chart that gets spat out by the computer as a mirror to deepen your self-study. It's not about taking the chart and then just going and doing what it says to do. It's about deepening your ability to be self-aware through self-study. And by doing that, then you stop outsourcing your authority and you start trusting your own rhythm, because you're not relying on someone else to read your chart for you and tell you what to do, which is actually why Soul School is such a popular program, because in Soul School, we go through 4 months of embodying your chart. So I pull down your human design and gene keys chart, and we look at the energetics of who you are and who your soul has been contracted to be in this lifetime. And over 4 months, we start to embody the parts of your energetics that you get to live. And I ask beautiful questions that are really reflective for you to learn more about who you are. And it sets the scene for this deepening of self-study. Then we go through leadership coaching, which is the difference between someone who wants to lead in a way that is powerful and magnetic versus someone who is reactive and authoritative. The difference between, this reactive leader and a grounded one is actually self-awareness. I can tell you that right now. the ability to notice your patterns, choose your response, and then lead from clarity instead of chaos. Knowing when to say, hey, you know what? I just need a moment to decide on that. Or it's been a long day. I can't make any more decisions today. Do you mind if I get back to you tomorrow? That is such a short sentence. And most leaders feel afraid to say that because they think that their inability to make a decision based on exhaustion or because they've got other competing priorities, they think that their ability to name that is the weakness, but I see that as such a strength. And the last one is spiritual practice, from yoga to mindfulness, depending on what it is that you do practice. And I also really love teaching people contemplative silence, meditation, it all begins with presence. You can't connect to something greater until you're connected to yourself. So what you do on the mat at first and foremost is connect with yourself, and then you expand outwards and connect with a higher power. But you cannot connect with that higher power unless you are connected with self. All right. So I went off on a bit of a tangent there, all about nervous system regulation and self-awareness. So I digress. I apologize, but I think it's really useful and helpful information. So let's get back to discernment, right? So for high performers, the ability to discern has been mostly overridden by the ability to endure. And most high performers, the word performer means that the show must go on, basically. And so pushing through is the noble path. You override the signal to rest. You override the need to pause, to take a breath, because you've never been shown how to trust that voice and how to give words to what it is that you need, how to say what you need in a way that's respectful and kind and is asking of what you want. And I think this is what makes discernment hard mostly, is that it's never loud. It doesn't always feel certain. It's quite soft, this feeling, this knowing of what to do. And it will quite often be something that feels like it slows you down so that it can tell you what to do next. If discernment was an energy, it would feel like you've been running at 1,000,000 miles an hour and then all of a sudden you start running through honey, like this slow motion. You're still trying to run, but discernment is like, whoa, stop, don't go so fast. And that slowing down gives you a moment to pause and then feel into what's next. And I think the reason that discernment is so tricky is because for high performers or people who work really fast and can do so much, have the capacity to complete many tasks in a short amount of time or be able to hold a lot, I think that one of the things that's really hard and tricky is that we want a 5-step plan, but discernment asks us to slow down, because even if we had a 5-step plan, the likelihood of that changing is 99%, because the discernment in itself will help you to course correct. So if you've been operating at a high level for months or years, your default setting will likely be go, go, go. And that's not because you're reckless or because of any other reason. It's just because that go, go, go is what makes you feel like you have momentum and you think you're successful because of it. But there's a trade-off for that. That same instinct to go, 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 the belief that you have that it's the go that makes you have momentum, that very instinct is what burns you out in the end. And discernment, if you learn how, is actually what gets you to stop for long enough so you don't drop the ball, because you create space to notice when you're at capacity, and it helps you to maintain performance without self-abandonment. And yeah, in so doing, you stop before you break. And you know what else it does? It actually, discernment for me is the pause that allows me to trust myself even after having burnt out at least 5 times. And the more I develop and cultivate my own sense of discernment, the stronger my trust with myself becomes. So I hope that I have spent a long amount of time. I don't know how long I've been on this episode, but I've spent a long amount of time trying to convince you that discernment is the missing piece. And now we're going to talk about accessing discernment and refining discernment. And this in itself is quite a long little section that I wanted to discuss with you, because I've got a couple of notes on how you can become more discerning. And we're going to talk about each of those suggestions in depth. So the first thing is to create stillness, not silence. Now, stillness practices, wherever they happen, whether they be on the cushion, the mat, the meditation stool, they're not the end goal. I repeat, they are not the end goal. They're the training ground, the safe space where we learn how to come home to ourselves so that when we step into the real world, whether it's the meeting or the hard conversation, the deadline, the dinner table, whatever that is, we do so with clarity, presence, and intention. So it's not about sitting in silence for 20 minutes and then calling that a win, although my friend, that is a win, but that's not the end goal. It's about what the 20 minutes does for you when your day starts to speed up and feel a bit out of control. The ritual of meditation or stillness practices in general teach us how to regulate, rest, and respond in a world that, especially if you're in a high pressure environment or high stakes environment, that constantly pulls you into reaction. It's not about escaping life. It's about equipping you for it so that you can hold yourself in those crazy environments and be still, have an inner stillness about you so that you're able to hold yourself in stress, conflict, when you feel like you're overly ambitious, when you feel like you're in a growth spurt. You also need to be able to hold yourself within that so that you don't go crazy. So that's the point. The stillness practice is different from checking out or numbing out. It's an intentional pause where you listen without forcing an outcome. You don't need an hour, you need just a moment. So I always start with 20 minutes because I find that 20 minutes is such a really good length of time. It's not too short, it's not too long, and you will learn when it's time for you to extend those practices to 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Maybe that time never comes for you, but 20 minutes is a really good amount of time because it will teach you how to pause in your life when you need a moment. Even if it's a moment, your body will recognize that feeling of being still and you'll be able to just conserve your energy before you have to do the thing, whether it's hit send on an email, before you say yes to the thing that you need to do or present or speak or anything like that, before you override your inner voice. The second thing that I want to talk about is to know your nervous system cues. Every single one of us has a telltale sign. For some, it's overthinking, where you just can't stop thinking. For others, it's snapping at small things that happen. I want you to learn how your system signals to you. And signal is saying, hey, I'm approaching the edge. I'm about to lose it. I want you to pay attention before you hit the red zone. You might recognize your own personal tell, and then those early signs of your nervous system giving you a warning sign before things start to spiral. Now, everyone's system will speak differently, but it always does speak. So if it's physical for you, it could be tight shoulders, clenched jaws, shallow breathing. If it's emotional, it could be irritability, sudden mood swings, feeling detached or very low on energy. If it's behavioral, it could be mindless scrolling, procrastinating, overbooking yourself, trying to control everyone and everything. The key here is to notice your pattern, not someone else's. Don't take that bait. Don't look outside of yourself and see how everyone else is dysregulated. Think about your own internal cues. So for example, if you're overthinking basic decisions that used to be easy, that's a tell. If you're snapping at people that you care about or getting defensive quickly, that's a tell. If your mornings start with a jolt instead of ease, that's a tell. If you feel like you're performing calm but not feeling it, that's a tell. If you can't wind down without wine, screens, or stimulants, huge tell. Now, the earlier you catch the signal, the easier it is to respond, but not with judgment. Please, no judgment here. Catch it with curiosity. Start asking yourself, what happens in my body when I'm nearing capacity? What's the first thing I let go of when I'm stressed? What do I pretend isn't a big deal but always leaves me feeling just a little bit off? Learning your tells, that is self-leadership. It's about how you regulate before you rupture. You don't want to get to the point where you've lost it. You want to be able to stay ahead of the game instead of constantly feeling like you're recovering from it. And the way you create space to recognize your signs, the subtle cues your system gives you before it hits overload, is through stillness and self-awareness practices. Not just rest, not zoning out, but intentional, consistent moments of tuning, turning inwards. And stillness is the most efficient way to create that inner visibility, because when you pause, whether it's on the mat, through breath work, meditation, or simply sitting without distraction in contemplation, when you stop outsourcing your awareness to the outside world and then you start listening to your own inner system, that's when the tells become clear. You can't recognize it and you can't cultivate discernment when you're too busy to notice. You cannot notice because you're sprinting past it. Stillness will give you the margin to catch the whisper before it becomes a scream. Remember, it's not about feeling calm all the time. It's about being able to cultivate and sharpen your discernment. So when your system says, I'm approaching capacity, you hear it and then you trust it. Okay, let's talk about treating discomfort as failure. I'll start off by saying that discomfort is data. If something feels off, it means you're feeling off. It means something's different. It doesn't mean that you're failing. It means that your system is trying to tell you something. And this is a big one because a lot of us feel this discomfort, and because it feels so uncomfortable, we revert back to old ways. And when we are learning a new skill like discernment, it might feel uncomfortable at first because it's new. As with anything, it's new. You know, I'm learning how to play golf at the moment, and I can tell you it's not the most comfortable thing to learn. My body's just doing things that it hasn't necessarily had to do before. But when I watch other golfers play, it looks like the most natural thing in the world. And it's because they've been practicing it for a while. But I can guarantee you when they first started, especially if they started it when they were in adulthood, it was also uncomfortable for them. And this is no different. Learning a new skill, like learning how to discern for yourself what's too much and what needs to change, that in itself it's a soft skill, which means that it might be even more uncomfortable because at times you can't put your finger on the thing that feels uncomfortable. You just know that it feels uncomfortable. And this is where I like to talk about it being not only a mindset shift, it's more of an identity shift, because when you're in the throes of doing something, you're doing it really well for a long period of time, like working at full capacity. When you slow down, as an example, that feels really uncomfortable and it shows up as a red flag. And then we're very used to, as high performance, when we see red flags or feel red flags, we see that as a sign to push harder or fix faster or hide it, mask it altogether. But that discomfort isn't a problem that you need to solve. It's a message that you need to interpret. And that feeling of tension or indecision or fatigue is your body's way of saying, hey, listen to me. Hey, something here needs attention. And this is where that self-awareness piece comes in, because it's very easy for us to bypass or numb. But what is required of us in these times is to pause long enough to ask, what is this trying to tell me? Growth in itself requires discomfort. And mistakes are always part of the process. I was at my golf lesson today, so it's kind of fresh in my mind. And my coach said to me, as a beginner, 90% of the time get it wrong. You're only going to get 1 or 10% of the shots right. And that's okay. That's all part of the process. You have to work through those 9 bad shots to get the 1 good shot. And those 9 bad shots, they're uncomfortable. I mean, I take it quite lightheartedly. I'm playing a game of golf. But if you're looking at this in the context of changing something that's inherent within us, those 9 strikes can be really uncomfortable, but they're proof that you're trying. It's evidence that you're evolving. And the more mistakes you make, the more data you're collecting. So the more hits I take, the more I swing my golf club, the more data I'm collecting within that moment, the more opportunities I have my coach say, hey, your grip is too loose, or you're not keeping your arms straight enough, or whatever the case is. And so each of those mistakes, it means that I'm collecting more data. And then the more data I have, the more I can sit with that data, the more insights I gain about how I'm swinging in this case, and then what works for me, because I have a very different body to the person next to me. And so I'm going to be doing things that that person next to me isn't doing, and I'm going to be swinging in a different way. And so the rectifications that I need to make are going to be different than from the person next to me. So it's the same concept. What works for me, what doesn't, where my edge really is very different from the person who's practicing this, who's either been doing it for a long time or has a natural tendency towards change. And so we get really wrapped up in looking at how other people do the things that we want to do, and we think we need to follow them and do what they're doing. But the thing is that when we're not winning at this game, let's say it's discernment, I want you to get curious, take a breath, zoom out. This is what separates high functioning burnout from high integrity leadership: the willingness to see discomfort as feedback and not failure. That's the real work. It's not really about getting it right all the time. It's about being present enough to learn when it doesn't go as planned, and then what you can do from there. All right. The next thing I want to talk about is the drivers that we use to make decisions, to discern whether we want to do something, can either be alignment or anxiety. And before you make a decision, I want you to ask yourself, is this coming from pressure or presence? Is this a fear of missing out, or is it from a genuine desire to do the thing? And if the answer isn't clear, I want you to wait and give yourself space. And the urgency will pass, and then what's left over is what needs to happen. Quite often, decisions are being presented, and depending on when those decisions need to be made, we will feel, especially if it's high stakes, by the way, we will feel pressured. And one of the most rebellious things that you can do when you feel pressured to make a decision is to pause. It doesn't matter who around you is waiting for those decisions to be made, even if it's a breath or 5 minutes. If the decision needs to be made, of course, it's, again, not a one-size-fits-all approach here, but 9 times out of 10, you can give that decision a little bit more time and get very curious about the desires behind making the decision. They're deceptively simple questions, but they reveal a lot. This idea of coming from presence or pressure. And when you're regulated, the choices that you make are quite grounded. You're able to think clearly, you're able to listen to your instincts and take aligned action. But when you're acting from pressure or urgency, you might feel like you have to decide right now, or the opportunity will disappear. This is why I don't like scarcity tactics on marketing and sales when it comes to offerings, because I feel like it really does put you in a position where you have to make a decision within a very short amount of time. And not everyone is designed to make decisions now, immediately. Some people need 48, 72 hours. They need longer to make decisions. Trying to pressure people into making decisions just doesn't really align with the way I want to do business. And that in itself creates a whole different energy. So if you are someone who's purchased something out of pressure, you will go into that thing with a different energy than if you had decided, not feeling pressured, but making sure that it's aligned with you and your values. That will feel very different going into that container. So another way is if your nervous system is activated. So is your heart racing? Do you have shallow breath, mental spinning? Are you obsessing over others, how they will perceive your choice? Are you trying to outrun a feeling rather than move towards something meaningful? So there's that running away from rather than towards. There's that whole concept. And then you might also feel exhausted or tense just thinking about it. I like to say, put it on for size. So try it on for 48 hours and see how it feels, because this really does help you to understand what is it about having made this play decision, the yes or the no. Put it on and see how it feels. And if it feels like you're making the decision out of fear of being left behind, judged, or not enough, versus what it feels like to have chosen something that comes from presence, like this feeling of steadiness behind having made that decision. You will know, you'll feel it in your body. You're making a decision from presence, your body feels clear. It feels like the right thing. Grounded, you feel ready. It's not like you're trying to prove anything. You're acting in alignment with what matters to you. And that energy in itself feels spacious, even if it is challenging. And like I said, if the answer isn't clear, please wait. Give yourself space. Sit with the discomfort of not knowing just for a little bit longer, because the urgency will pass. And once that urgency is gone, the clarity will come. And from that clarity is the truth, especially if you give it room to blossom. That truth is what discernment looks like in real time, my friends. It's not about overanalyzing. It's really about getting behind the decision and then noticing how your energy changes. Gosh, so many different ways for you to cultivate discernment. The last thing I want to leave you with is that if you've listened to this and you're like, yeah, I don't even know, like there's so many big decisions that I need to make in my life and I'm too scared, too nervous to practice cultivating discernment because I'm scared I get it wrong. Practice on the small things. Don't wait for the big decisions to finally learn how to listen or become discerning. If discernment is a muscle, you get to build it daily. Say no when your calendar's already full. Pause the scroll when you feel scattered. End the meeting 5 minutes early to reset. Do little acts of self-kindness and practice discernment on the things that almost don't matter, which, by the way, paradoxically, those are the things that matter the most. But the things that you don't think matter, and practice discernment there, because that's where you'll start to flex that muscle. Remember, it's not about perfection. It's just about presence. It's about self-awareness and becoming really present in that self-awareness practice. In that moment, you begin to self-transform, even when it feels messy. It is a skill. It takes practice, but it is possible to learn. I'm going to leave you with a couple of questions that you can reflect on. Write them down. Use them in times where you feel like you need a little bit of support. And then come back to your answers again and again and again, and notice whether the answers that you give to these questions change. And again, if you'd like someone in your corner while you build this muscle, this is exactly the kind of work that I do in the Lead from Stillness 6-month experience. Okay, the questions. What does pushing feel like in your body? And opposing that, what does alignment feel? And then can you tell the difference? So pushing for me feels like clenched jaws, shallow breath, as I've mentioned a million times in this episode. And alignment feels like this sense of calm and ease and just joy. It's a feeling. And yeah, I can tell the difference. Another question, what signs does your nervous system give when you're approaching burnout? Mine are the inability to sleep deeply, the inability to focus on a conversation when I'm on the phone with my family and friends because my mind is racing. What are yours? What are your signs? Another question is, have you been mistaking adrenaline for alignment? Whew, this is a good one. And then can you name some of those examples so that you can retrospectively go back to what happened in that moment and just notice why you would have mistaken adrenaline for alignment. Another question is, what would it look like to earn trust with yourself again? What would that look like? How could you listen better? And the final question is, what might you discover if you stop managing your energy like a task list and start relating to it as feedback? Oh, you're feeling tired today. No problem. Let's have an extended nap. You're feeling really lethargic. You know what? I think we're going to go for an afternoon walk. I know that always makes you feel better. It's like talking to your nervous system like it's a little child, like allowing yourself to feel safe and giving your body, your mind, your spirit what it needs so that it can then show up for you fully. My friend, I really hope that this has been a helpful episode. I'd love to hear back from you. Please feel free to email me or message me on whatever social channel you feel. And I truly hope that there's been a nugget of wisdom in here that can really help you to cultivate discernment in your life so you can make decisions that are truly in alignment with where you're going and who you are, rather than feeling like you're being pushed in a direction that you don't know how to come back from. Thank you so much for being with me. And until next time, bye for now.